Hello, and welcome to the As of Yet Untitled podcast with a title. I'm your host, Brian Corrigan, and today I have another special human being with me. Special to me, at least. His name's Jacob. How are you
Hello.
doing?
Hello. I'm not dead, so that's, a plus.
Well, we'll just jump right into that then.
Yes.
All right. So
recently, I'm not dead.
Recently, you gave everyone a little bit of a panic on Twitter, I think.
It was a private panic because I don't think I actually fully announced it on Twitter until after it was over.
Oh yeah, I think the way you worded it on Twitter publicly, everybody was like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" But you got the Rona.
I did, and I distinctly remember when I told you and basically everyone else in one of the private group chats. It was in that chat. I was basically
the shit Doctor Who opinions chat.
Yeah. So I was like, so guys, I might be dying. It was basically like, fine, it's fine. It wasn't fine.
Okay, so tell me what it was like then, because I haven't actually known anyone else who's had it or gotten it. So what's like the whole process of just being in quarantine or like actually having it like?
Yeah. Okay. So it started for me as just a sore throat, and I thought nothing of it, sore throat. But I'm at a university, so I went and made sure, like, hey, I got a sore throat, you guys. I'm gonna be zooming into classes today, which was completely fine. Professors were obviously understanding. It didn't go away. And I was trying to keep it mostly private because, like, I don't want people to worry. This is just a sore throat. It's fall. It's probably just a cold. And then the next day, it didn't go away, but it didn't get worse. So, like, I'm like, okay, well, it's been over a day. It's important to me to get tested. So I kid you not, I get off the phone with my university's, like, with my university sort of like the health side of things. So they're like, hey, I gotta go get tested. It's probably fine. I get a call from my father, basically saying, okay, we just heard back from your brother. He's positive for COVID-19.
Oh dear.
We're all positive for COVID-19. You need to get tested now. And I'm like, okay. So I got tested. And I got tested twice. I got tested one through just your standard 3 to 7 day testing, and then one was a rapid test later that day that I happened to get access to, and it came back positive. So because I was already slightly sick, they didn't want to take any chances. So they'd already moved me into isolation. Isolation was fine for like 5 days. Like 5 days, it's fine. It's an inconvenience. And it essentially just stayed as like a sore throat and then some congestion for like 5 days. And then after 5 days, the fever hit.
Oh.
This fever, the highest it ever got was 102 degrees. So,
Woo!
that is a high fever. I'm speaking in Fahrenheit, of course, which I think is like about 40 Celsius. I think I don't know the conversion off the top of my head. Basically, from when the fever hit, that was like a Wednesday, until that Saturday, I was basically non-functioning. I was not able to function. Like, I would get up, I would zoom into not even all my classes, only like some of my classes. And if you know me, that is not normal Jacob behavior.
I think I have a little bit of the timeline here, just based on like interactions with you during this. I think I can relatively.
You could tell. I went dead for like a good 3 days. I think I even just was off of the internet just because.
I think what happened was, you're like, if I don't have a fever tomorrow, we'll continue adapting that story we're adapting. And I was
Yes.
like, okay. And then, lo and behold, the next day you had a fever, and you're like, yeah, no.
It's like, yeah, no. It's like, I love you, Brian, but we're not doing this.
And then I think you died for 3 days.
Yeah. Basically, what happened, and that's where basically the isolation completely set in. I basically started losing my mind, partially because the fever just would not break, like, and we were getting closer and closer to the, like, this was like, again, this was starting to get closer to 2 weeks after the symptoms had started. So, and then almost as quickly as it came, it disappeared. Like, the fever was there. I went to it. I'm like, I really, really hope I turn the corner. The next day, like, someone snapped their fingers. It was gone. Like it was just the weirdest thing. Like, the weirdest thing has really been the after effects. Because, like,
okay, so yeah, that's, before you get into that, I am really curious about the after effects, because that hasn't been something that's been reported on. Like, there's been mentioned that there are after effects, but
there are after effects.
Nobody has really said what they are, and I want you to tell me.
It's sort of like fatigue. Like, so, they let me out of isolation, and the weirdest thing, I couldn't basically until a couple of days ago, I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without getting winded. And for context, I'm not in the best shape, but I'm by no means, like, completely out of shape. Like, walking up a flight of stairs is, like, fine.
You're saying you're not like me. Okay, I see how it is. Fat and asthmatic.
Well, here's the thing. I also lost weight. Like, I don't know how much, but I know I've had to have lost weight because certain clothes no longer fit. And it's like, this is different.
Like, not the normal amount of weight you lose when you're sick, because normally when you're really sick, you do lose weight, but...
Well, I don't know, because I've never actually... This is actually the first time I've ever been really sick. Like...
Oh, shit, so you've never had, like, flu or anything like that?
No.
Really badly?
No. I've had, like, bugs, like, the occasional bug that'll... I think the worst I've had is, like, 2 days of sickness.
Because there was one year, a few years back, where I can't really say it's the flu. I think it was more of like an allergic reaction to some preservatives on some... My school did salads, and school salads aren't exactly fresh. And
no, they are not.
The preservatives they put on the lettuce fucked with my system a lot. So there was a couple years there where I was just really sick, shitting my guts out constantly, and I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And then, I stopped eating the salads, and conclusion is it was the fucking salads. But,
PSA, do not eat salads.
Basically, I'd have, like, flu symptoms. Like I said, I'd be puking or shitting my guts out, and I'd lose some weight, but never to the point where my clothes didn't fit.
Yeah, like, this is I have...
Like, this was noticeably, I have lost weight.
Yeah, this is a noticeably, I have gotten slightly thinner. Which is kind of scary. Hopefully I can keep the weight off, because I would love to be below 200 pounds. That would be a very nice weight to be at.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'11".
That's not that short.
No, I'm 5'11 and 3/4.
That's relatively tall.
Yes, no. I'm just annoyed because I have a younger brother who is, like, 4 inches taller than me.
You should be just fine at, like, 200 pounds, dude.
Not when it's mostly fat.
That's true. I suppose. Yeah.
Like, if it was muscle, that's fine. This is fat.
Just, like, do some workouts, yo. Like, shape that shit.
I've been trying, but then COVID happened.
Yeah, I feel that. Unfortunately for me, there isn't like a gym near where I live. The one I go to is right across from my high school. And you know, every school year I go to the gym, and you know, I like to say I sculpt what I have. I don't necessarily lose weight, but I lose fat,
Which is good.
which is good. But I haven't been able to do that this year because
I know there are at-home workouts you can do, which are
but they're like,
because I do a lot of I do a lot of running.
See, I don't do a lot of cardio because it fucks. Well, hypothetically, it should, you know, strengthen my cardiovascular system, but the asthma is a big deterrent for me. So a lot of what I do.
Oh, right, yeah, you're asthmatic. Yeah, no. See, I do cardio partially because a little over a year ago I ran a 5K. I trained to run a 5K. And I just sort of kept going. Like, nowhere near as intense or anything, but like I found I enjoyed running, which is weird.
I mean, like, I'm still like a pretty portly fellow. I have not sculpted a lot. Like I'm still like dad beer belly type motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah.
I'm hoping that as time moves on, I'll be able to do just enough cardio to where I'm losing enough fat to the point where I'll be able to, you know, get down to a healthy weight for me and also gain enough muscles so that like any loose skin or whatever is just filled in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, back to COVID after effects.
Yeah, no, it's just the fatigue.
So it takes a lot out of you.
It takes a lot out of you. I've noticed that, though, like, after a week or so, I've been better. Because as we're recording this, it's been about a week since the symptoms disappeared.
Would you say you're back to normal, or would you say there's still some shit lingering?
I wouldn't say I'm back to full normal, but we're getting there. I'm at least back to focusing, because there was just a point where I could not focus on anything. And but yeah, it's definitely a weird illness. And the thing is it affected every member of my family differently. Like, my little sister had no symptoms at all. Like,
wasn't your brother asymptomatic as well?
He was for a while, but then he got struck with basically a fever. He slept for like 48 hours and then was fine.
Wow, 48 hours. Jesus.
Oh, my brother couldn't. I think my brother's sleeping record is like 72 hours.
He slept for 3 days straight.
My brother loves sleep.
Holy shit, dude. I can barely sleep for 12. Are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah, no, he's weird. He's weird.
What the fuck? I'm confused.
You've met my brother.
I have
met my brother.
I've met him once.
Once, but that was recently. And
And I feel like I didn't get to know him particularly well.
No, you didn't. You kind of did.
I mean, I definitely got to know some of his sense of humor, which is, you know, fine, but based on what you've told me about him, I didn't see a lot of who he actually is.
Yeah.
So, speaking of that, that's a nice transition to the other thing I wanted to talk to you about.
The thing that I'm not surprised we have the same interests, but I'm also surprised we have the same interests.
Yeah, so playing D&D is something you and I both do.
Yes, we do.
In our own respective lives.
Yes, we do.
Recently...
I promise I did not drag Brian Corrigan into playing D&D ever.
Oh, no, it wasn't him. Like, I think I started about a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably about the same for me, too.
Actually, it's over a year ago. Shit.
Yeah, probably a little over a year ago because, but yeah.
But yeah, so it's another one of those things that my dad and I did initially to do a little bonding, because I don't know if I've said this before, but my dad and I my dad wasn't exactly great when I was little. He didn't really know how to handle little kids, and so was just angry a lot. Not that he wasn't like abusive or anything.
It wasn't abusive anger. It was you are a child and I have no idea how to deal with this situation, I'm guessing.
Pretty much. He wasn't like overly sweary or anything, and he didn't like hit me or anything. So
No.
like anyone going like, "Oh, Brian's dad is evil." No. My dad just was an adult, a professional who doesn't have
what you're saying is
doesn't
Brian's
really
dad
have
was a
time for little
nerd.
children.
Brian's dad was a nerd.
Essentially. He's never been particularly good with being social. So yeah, he's a professional, and like I said, he's like top of the line in his area of work. So he's a busy man and didn't have time for little kid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got older, though,
well, because he's also he's the guy that introduced you to Doctor Who.
Yeah,
so like he's
there are snapshots that my mom took, sort of like photos of him doing a rare, blowing bubbles with me as a toddler. So it's not like he wasn't present throughout my childhood, but a lot of it was I was basically a mommy's boy because
he just wasn't a traditional father.
Yeah, he wasn't your traditional dad. He fulfilled his role in the sense that he had a stay-at-home wife, and he was the one who went to work and made money for the family. And, that's fine. But, as I became a teenager, obviously he related to me a bit more. And I'd say we have a pretty good father-son relationship now. I think sometimes he does stuff with me to sort of make up for those years when he didn't really bond with me when I was little. And one of those things that we decided to do together was Dungeons and Dragons. I think I missed the first session we were supposed to do, actually, because I went to see Spider-Man Far From Home with Zach. But the next week I sat down. It wasn't really my first time playing D&D, but it sort of was. Like, technically I had tried to play it with another group of friends, but the DM was awful and didn't know what he was doing, so it didn't go well. The current DM we have now, his name is Chance. He was playing Curse of Strahd was the game we were playing, and we still haven't finished it. I think we're waiting until COVID's over to finish it. But yeah, so I've basically been playing D&D ever since, and I've really, really enjoyed it. And in fact, I now DM my own little group on Wednesdays, so it's fun.
Yeah. See, I've got D&D for me is one of those weird things that like I kind of just sort of got dragged into it. Mainly because a bunch of my other friends were like starting to get into it, and I'm just like, well, I mean, I'm not a particularly creative person, but let's try this. And so like, and it became one of those weird things where actually my brother got into it about the same time as me. Like about a year ago, basically a very close friend of mine, William Brown, was like, who Brian, you've met.
I have met.
And
I've worked with, actually.
You have worked with. More than once, actually, because he's done...
He was in Time of Your Life, but I don't think I directly worked with him.
You didn't directly work with him. That was just a... That was more of a... Will kind of wanted to do something audio-related. I was like, well, we've got this
I think
coming up.
I think
dude.
we actually asked Will to do Genesis, didn't we?
Yeah, we had to. Yeah, that was. We talk about it at the time we're in retrospective about how that situation.
Yeah, you can
happened.
find that on Joey's
His
channel, Security
yeah.
Kitchen Productions.
But I basically Will got me into D&D with Pathfinder, with a game of Pathfinder where I played a human fighter, which was the most generic character you could ever think of.
My first character was a fighter as well.
Yeah, no, there's a reason you choose a human fighter as your first character, because it's simple, and I enjoyed it. So I kind of just sort of played on and off for about a year, basically until my birthday this year. So what was happening is my brother is in a D&D group, and I would guest occasionally. Trouble with my brother's D&D group is that it's a group full of people who metagame a lot, and people who make just characters that aren't characters.
Give us an example. I think I have an idea of where this is going, but give me an example.
Well, one of the characters was literally started out as a rogue. Had no personality traits, except was apparently somehow important to the story. And he decided, well, I'm gonna do some levels in Warlock because roguelocks are cool. And this was from a player who we would roll for stats and would have more than 118 at level 1, and you're just like, okay, that's insanely lucky. Essentially things like that, and they would be people who would essentially make the story about themselves. They would always want to be the center of attention. But they wouldn't provide any backstory or any sort of character traits other than, let's see what chaos we can do.
Oh, that's upsetting. I hate it when people do that.
So so then on my birthday, I basically which was in the middle of COVID, I had essentially a drive-by party.
Right.
And after a few drinks, my brother and I were talking with Will, who was at this party, and it was like, yeah, we really want to do D&D, but we don't we want to get a long running session going, and we want to do a campaign, but we want to do something where we can basically have roleplay heavy and actually craft characters. So he's like, well, and Will is and he'll never admit this, but he's an utter genius when it comes to world building. The dude has a full fantasy world ready.
Oh,
with its own history.
I'm well aware of that, just based on the amount of prepping
I
had to do to make my character fit within his world.
No, the dude. It partially Will is someone who, if you have a very vague idea for a character, that's probably the best, because that means you can shape it. So we started this campaign just, I guess, after my birthday, and it's been going strong since essentially middle June. It's a fun campaign. I play an elf druid. The party is also consists of an Eladrin warlock, a tiefling paladin, and a Firbolg cleric, and it's a lot of fun. And also, Will knows how to tug at your heartstrings and make things emotional. But that's basically how I got into D&D and how I got into basically the campaign I'm in now, which, Brian, you guessed it on.
I did.
For
I
a
did
week.
guest on it, and I'm going to briefly explain the two different experiences I've had. So, the guy who DMs, Curse of Strahd, for me, his name's Chance, and he's really good at what he does. My dad and I went to this sort of local taverny place and started playing there. So like uber nerd shit. But anyway, we met up with Chance probably August last year. And he definitely has his own style of DMing, which is something I try to replicate. And it's sort of like you have a loose idea of the rules and you stick to like all the basic gameplay elements of checks and rolling and all that, but overall you just sort of try to have fun and not worry too much about like domains and
alignment and everything.
Alignment, and we'll say something like weight or like rations or anything,
carrying
like that.
Capacity, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're here to have an adventure and not make it
you can just
complicated.
make the assumption that you
and that's sort of what I try and do. Will's style seems to be a little different from that, where he's a bit more on the book and like by the book, and like that's totally fine. It was a different experience that I'm not used to. I definitely enjoyed playing with you guys the other night. It was a hoot. But
and it was for those listening at home, it was a good session. It was a good mix of sort of everything that we've done. Because Will likes to do is Will likes to subvert expectations in a good way. Like the first session we ever played as this group, we were basically solving a murder, and somehow our party, who basically has 2 brain cells, I usually am one of the few people with one of the brain cells, basically stumbled into the murderer's home, and it's like, wait, what? And basically the motivations were like really deep and complex, for the reason this person killed them. So it basically made all of us sort of question, like, do we turn this person in? Like, they've killed 3 people, but also like they aren't a bad person. So yeah, things like that.
But I'm gonna be straight up with you, Jacob. I felt bad playing with you guys the other night because I felt like I had nothing to contribute or say.
You were fine, Brian.
I think I'm used to, when I make a new character, sort of hitting the ground running being really important to this story, because I'm part of the core group. I've never guested on a D&D campaign before, so I've never had the experience of just sort of being like a side character who happens to be played by someone who's real and not the DM. So I guess I served my main purpose, but I was just like, this is much different from how I normally do things. I wonder
Give it like 3 months.
I wonder if I'm doing it right.
Well, I mean, it helps that you're in a group that are all our characters are kind of a bunch of idiots in a lot of ways, because we're all a bunch of people who just kind of got like, all our characters have basically the backstory of, we've all sort of been thrown together and are sticking together because we're all essentially, like, from our respective cultures, are essentially just have grown up, and like are trying to figure out who the fuck we are, which is always fun, but yeah,
I just hope I wasn't too underwhelming or boring as a guest.
Oh, you weren't. Because
like I said, I had a lot of fun. I just I just didn't know if I was living up to expectations or not. But yeah, no, Will's really good at DMing, like, and being by the book, because I sort of have a respect for both types of DMs, even though I've never played under one. Just sort of the idea as a whole of, like, you play more by, like, a loosey-goosey house rule, or you play more by your book and what you've set in stone for your world.
Well, there are definitely like house rules that Will does.
I'm not saying there aren't. It's just he's very by the book, and not like Chance, in the sense that he's just like, I'll just assume you did it, and you don't actually have to do it.
Yeah. Well, because Will's also primarily a kind of a storyteller. Like, I know he's working on a novel. That I have not read any of because it's not ready for other people's eyes, but I'm sure will be brilliant. Because it's
novels. You know what I found a couple years ago? Just speaking of like unfinished manuscripts, my dad actually wrote 2 sci-fi novels.
He wrote 2 sci-fi novels. They weren't published?
He never published them. They're like heavily inspired by Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek, and Doctor Who.
True.
I was reading one of them, and there's like this very, very obvious sort of like Cyberman inspired thing.
The question is, do we now try to get your dad's novels published?
No, I promised him I wouldn't. I was like, don't worry, I'm not gonna Christopher Tolkien your books.
You may have said that, but did I?
But, no, so they're called Lucifer's Mirror and Phoenix Cubed, I think. And yeah, they're just sort of like, I flipped through them. I haven't like read them in full because they're both like 300 pages long, but they seem pretty interesting. He's really embarrassed by them.
But probably because he thinks they're fanfic. He probably regards them in the same vein as fanfic. Maybe. Like, I don't want to put words in your dad's mouth or anything.
But I've always sort of been like, you can take inspiration and take the basic idea of something and sort of transform it and change it up just enough so that you can fit it within your own stories and universe. I've always been for that as a storyteller, because the idea that anything is truly original just doesn't work. Isn't true. Anymore.
Yeah, no, nothing is truly original. Nothing has been original ever. Ever. Like, William Shakespeare didn't write anything original. All of his plays are based on stories that were already either popular or known at the time. It's never been fully original.
I do think the most fanficky it really gets in either of these books that I've seen thus far is the main enemies of one of them, sort of like the main villains, are these Cyberman-like things. Like, their design is similar and they have a similar name. They're like, I'm blanking on what they're actually called right now, but it's something in the same vein as like Siberians or something. And they've got teardrop eyes, so it's pretty obvious where those came from.
Where the inspiration was drawn from.
Yeah. But if you just changed like their physical description slightly, it'd be fine. Maybe change the name too. Yeah, it'd be fine.
It'd be fine. It'd be very fine.
Like, they don't operate, like I said, they don't operate on the same, we must assimilate all life. They've got some other computer logic twist about them. but no, they're not characterized like the Cybermen. They just look like the Cybermen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought they were fun. He thinks they're terrible and never wants them to see the light of day, though.
Look, if E.L. James can get published...
Who's E.L. James?
The woman who wrote 50 Shades of Grey.
Ooh!
By literally... just
Twilight fanfic.
Ripping off Twilight and poorly filing off the serial numbers. Then I'm sure your dad could get published.
Here's the thing. He doesn't want to. He flat out, he does not want to get published. He's just like, I never want anyone to read these. He was kind of mad when I found them and was like, I'm not throwing these out. I'm saving them because I think they have some value. I won't do anything with them. Like, I won't share them with the world, but I would like to have them.
Well, don't let me get a hold of them because I will start selling them to publishers. Because the world needs more authors.
The world does need more authors. I just wish I could sit down and write a damn book.
Brian, you can barely sit down and read a damn book.
I know. Here's the thing. I really, really want to write a book. Because I know I can write. I think everyone's seen I can write at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you can. You just gotta sit down and do it. And
that's the issue. Like, I don't have the fucking attention span.
Have you looked at any of Brandon Sanderson's creative writing lectures?
I have not.
Okay. So, do you know who Brandon Sanderson is?
No.
Okay, my poor sweet summer child. So, Brandon Sanderson is a fantasy author. He might be he's definitely up there with one of my favorite authors. His first published book was published in like 2005. Right? He has published, and it's a decent sized book, 500 pages. He has published at least one book a year since 2005, right?
Sorry about the chair, everyone. It's very creaky this evening.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably creaking because I'm on a swivel chair and this thing creaks insanely. Brandon Sanderson, again, the shortest book I think he's ever actually published is maybe 300 pages. Like, this dude can get out anywhere between 300 pages and over 1,000 pages into a book, sometimes more than one book, in a year. Like,
this man's like unlocked the secret that Stephen King has.
No. Well,
and I've read Stephen King's memoir on writing. It's actually called On Writing.
Right? Yeah. No. Trust me. I have read.
And Stephen King.
That was the first thing I ever read from Stephen King. Actually, was his memoir because it was assigned in high school.
Well, that's why I read it too. But I was like, maybe I'll learn something from him. And I was just like, holy shit, this man just does it through pure willpower, and I don't know if I can do that.
But yeah, Brandon Sanderson, and he has a series of lectures on YouTube, basically all about. He's the guy who finished The Wheel of Time, which is a big famous fantasy series, which I know I've talked to you about before because I've been trying to get. If you haven't read The Wheel of Time,
you're not the only person I know who's read it.
Yes,
my dad. He read the first few of them. His sister read like all of them. I have family members who like Wheel of Time.
I have read them all, and it is brilliant, and I love it. That's besides the point. But yeah, it's basically Sanderson's lectures are a great place to start to learn how to write, effectively, I think. But yeah, and they're also just interesting to listen to, because the dude is just like a chill guy, who like he had a guest lecture for writing short stories because Brandon Sanderson cannot write a short story to save his life because then he he just doesn't stop.
See, that is something I like doing, though. As much as I want to write a full-on novel, I also really like writing short stories.
Well, then start writing short stories.
I have. I've written short stories. I just haven't shared them with the world.
Well,
the one I point most
Brian.
people to, because I think it's probably the most artsy-fartsy one I've done, and it's the only one I've let out into the world, is Riverfront.
Well, just start let more out. Get, I don't know, submit them to, magazines? Do magazines still take short stories?
I don't think they do. See, that was another thing in Stephen King's memoir that I was like, that the time for me to start dipping my foot in like that has passed because magazines don't do short stories. Or I don't know of any that do. And are widely accessible and popular.
The New Yorker, the Atlantic, still do.
Do they?
Yeah, apparently they still do.
I'd have to be stupid good to get into those, though.
You could try. It doesn't matter. Heck, you can just start publishing to a blog or something if people start reading them.
One thing I'm also concerned about is I'm afraid if I start letting out my short stories, they're not exactly going to be consumer friendly, in the sense that
E.L. James got published.
True, but there's a market for that. I sort of fall into that category of cynical black humor when I write, and if I'm not doing that, I intentionally try to make all my stories somewhat bleak because that's what connects with me emotionally.
Okay. Dude, Grimdark is an entire subgenre of fantasy.
What the fuck does that? What is Grimdark?
It is literally what you're describing as shit with humanity. It's all themes of humanity.
See, I'm not even talking fantasy though. I'm talking sci-fi or just
there's grimdark sci-fi. There's grimdark sci-fi. These things, Brian, these things exist. You can do it. I mean, they publish Neil Gaiman and his shit gets dark. I know you don't like Neil Gaiman because you're a weirdo, but
it might. Okay, I probably need to sit down and actually read a Neil Gaiman book at some point.
You do. Or just get an audiobook because.
But here's the issue. All of his TV adaptations of stuff I've seen, I can't fucking stand it.
You just have you seen the film Coraline?
I have.
Oh, God, it's such a good film.
I saw it when I was little.
It's such a good movie.
Maybe that's what put me off of him. It's a really creepy movie, and
it's a really creepy book.
Even without it being creepy, I was just sort of it's all right.
We need to get you to read more Neil Gaiman.
Well, here's the thing.
Do you like? Do you like The Doctor's Wife? The episode of The Doctor's Wife?
No, I don't like that episode of Doctor Who.
Really? You're wrong because it's great. Nightmare in Silver is crap, and we blame Moffat for that because.
But yeah, I don't like The Doctor's Wife. There are elements of The Doctor's Wife I do like, but as a whole, I don't like that episode of Doctor Who.
We need to get you to read more Neil Gaiman.
But part of me wonders if Neil Gaiman is just a repeat of the issue I had with Douglas Adams, in the sense that...
You don't like Douglas Adams?
I didn't like Douglas Adams. I like him now.
Okay, good.
Douglas Adams is pretty fucking fire.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, I didn't like him. I did not like Douglas Adams. And part of me wonders if it's just a repeat of that, where I didn't like Douglas Adams until I had reached a certain point in my life.
Yeah, which is very possible, I will say.
And I wonder if I haven't reached the point in my life where I'm hell yeah, Neil Gaiman.
Well, okay, I started to really fall in love with the work of Gaiman about 3 years ago. So, around age 18, 19. So you're probably getting there. Do you have an Audible account, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so Audible did a adaptation of the first 3 volumes of the comic series The Sandman, with a full cast, and it's an Audible original. And I think with Audible's new rules, I think you can now just get it for free with your Audible account. So
I think you have to have like a subscription to Audible. I have an account, but I don't have the subscription.
You don't have a subscription. You don't have a subscription?
I'm not subscribed.
Okay, well, I'd argue that might be a good place to start with Neil Gaiman.
If I'm gonna start anywhere, I think I kind of want to start with American Gods.
American Gods is good. Again, there's also a great Audible version of that because it's an unabridged audiobook, but it's got full cast narration.
Well, it's just I've heard a lot about American Gods, but not enough to actually know what it's about. Same with Sandman, but as you're telling me, Sandman was a comic and now it's an adaptation.
You can still get the comics.
I'm sitting here like I'm not sure if
I haven't read the comics. I haven't read the comics. I have just listened to the adaptation.
I'm not sure if listening to the adaptation would do me any favors, because I tried to watch the first episode of Good Omens and I was just like, fucking kill me.
You hurt me so much.
I hurt everyone when I say that. Everybody loves Good Omens, and I just...
Yes, because it's Neil and Terry, and it's the big parody of the Omen plus middle finger to Christianity in a lot of ways.
And I'm all for the middle finger to Christianity, don't get me wrong. But yeah, no. I just can't get into it.
You hurt me.
It hurts. You know how much it hurts me, because outside of Doctor Who, I really like David Tennant as an actor, and I can't get into it.
Again, what is it about Good Omens that you don't like?
It's just a little too goofy for me.
It's not really that goofy.
The episode I watched was
the first
ridiculous.
Episode. I mean, no more ridiculous. Again, no more ridiculous than like Hitchhikers.
I guess it just wasn't clicking when I watched it. I was just like, okay, what?
Well, try it again, because we need. Again, how do you? This is. Listeners, I am making so many faces right now.
And to bring it back to the Douglas Adams thing, the exact same thing happened to me when I experienced Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for the first time.
You were just like, oh, this is just too goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
And...
Okay, I will say, Good Omens in looking at Neil Gaiman's work is probably his goofiest work. Like, a lot of the rest of the things he's written is more serious.
I'd argue Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is ludicrously ridiculous, and I can get into that. I just wonder, because there is a comparison to be made there. I know Neil Gaiman, just based on little bits and bobs I've read about interviews with him, he's heavily inspired by Douglas Adams.
I mean, yeah, there are other inspirations.
Right, but my point is they do have, at least from what I know, they do have a sort of crossover in writing style, and I wonder if it's just Gaiman's humor.
They both get down, when it comes down to it, they both have the ability to be very, very human, and that appeal. There's just a sort of an appeal to humanity that isn't there with you get with people like Gaiman and and Adams, and I'd also toss in Terry Pratchett in it, in sort of that trifecta of just appealing to humanity in a lot of ways. If that makes sense.
I suppose. I just wonder if it takes me a little like a long time to warm to their senses of humor, I guess. Because, like I said, I really do think there is a comparison to be made based on what I know between the two authors. I don't know anything about Terry Pratchett.
You also might like, again, you might like Coraline. You also might like Neverwhere, which is basically a children's book. If you can track down a copy of the illustrated edition, it's a gorgeous hardcover. That again, it's another story, a lot about humanity. Same with American Gods. It's a lot of the things that Gaiman writes about are just people, and they're very, very different things. I'm sure there's some really just again some amazing prose that Neil sort of succeeds at, that like takes you into like a lot of, because a lot of his work leans heavily into fairy tales, that sort of style of storytelling. Like he opens Neverwhere with just this really, really good line that sort of really sets the tone. The night before he went to London, Richard Mayhew was not enjoying himself. And with that one line, you know so much about where the story is going, and what Neil Gaiman is going to do. And yeah, basically what I'm saying is read more Neil Gaiman, Brian.
Yeah, I think it's something on my bucket list for sure. I do want to give him a chance. I know I've been a bit dicky.
Again, his audiobooks, he narrates a lot of his audiobooks as well, so that might help. Because he also has one of those. He has this voice, where you can just.
I've heard it, and that's one thing I will give him. His voice when he's like speaking to an audience is very captivating,
and that is how he narrates. That is exactly how he narrates.
Because
that is just the way the man speaks.
Because of my interests, I've had his masterclass advertised to me on YouTube before.
I have started his masterclass because it was free. You could buy a year of masterclass subscription for $1 yesterday. So I did.
How is it?
Oh, it's good. It's good. It's a lot about storytelling. Again, a lot of good advice about how to tell a story and how he tells a story. But again, it's one of those things. Again, he has a voice I could listen to. He could read me the phone book, and I would be content because it's Neil Gaiman.
Actually, no, there was one more thing I wanted to say about Neil Gaiman before I changed topics. But yeah, no, his masterclass ad on YouTube is probably the only ad with a skip button that I never skip, just because each and every time I'm really captivated by what he's saying.
You hear that voice.
Yeah, there's just something about the way he speaks that draws you in.
Yeah. And again, it might help if you listen to audiobook versions of his prose. And especially if it's read by him, because then you can really get that feeling. Because, I mean, obviously you say you have an Audible account, like you don't get credits at all? Like...
The only time I get credits is around... Because there are technically 2 types of Audible subscriptions you can get. So, I get 2 new audiobooks sort of like in spring, and 2 new audiobooks in fall.
Interesting. So you don't get a monthly subscription.
No, because I'm not subscribed to anything.
Well, yeah, because
I get a free trial every 6 months.
Well, because they did the big they did the change for basically a new sorry, we had an interruption by the mother. But yes, no, because Audible now has a $7.99 subscription where you basically get streaming of their specific library. And there are a couple of things that you can get. But yeah, Neil Gaiman is someone you should try to listen to.
But on the note of people with voices, that are just immediately captivating, I promise this is not going to stay on Doctor Who as I mention this. I mean, it sort of is, but it also isn't. I bought my first issue of Doctor Who magazine recently in case anyone who doesn't know Doctor Who is listening to this. Basically, there's this big multimedia story going on right now, told across books, radio,
audios,
comics, and
t-shirts. There's a t-shirt.
There's a t-shirt that apparently has... How fucking cash grabby is that, by the way?
I don't know. And what's funnier is, like, on Twitter you had that guy getting all pissy at me for it's like, well, how? Apparently I need to...
Anyway, so there's this big story going on across a bunch of different mediums, and I bought the Doctor Who magazine because they have an ongoing comic thread in that's linked to this big multimedia story. But in there, I didn't know they did this, but they also have, like, links to other things that the actors do in their spare time. And just, again, I was introduced to this guy through Doctor Who, but I love him outside of it too. Paul McGann, phenomenal actor.
Yes.
I love him so much. It's a shame he's not in more TV and stuff. But yeah, no, love him. I could listen to his voice for hours. He hosts a podcast.
He does?
He does. It's not a podcast in sort of like the sit-down talk show sense. He narrates basically this documentary podcast series about dictators.
Ooh, that sounds yeah. I could listen to that.
So the other night, I had to stay up really late for some reason. I can't remember what it was, and I really didn't want to listen to anything Doctor Who related. In the sense that it was actually Doctor Who, and I was like, shit. Well, Doctor Who is basically the only thing I have left at this point. So what the hell am I supposed to do? I could have listened to the rest of the Silmarillion, which I'm very close to being finished with, but I didn't.
Which means you'll have read something that I have not read, because I have never read the Silmarillion.
It's really good. You should.
I know I should, but I have to prep for Tolkien reading because it's Tolkien.
Yeah, it is really like you get the backstory of every fucking tree branch.
Yes.
It's upsetting. But anyway, so yeah, I was listening to this the other night, and I think I fell asleep listening to it. He's telling basically the life story of these people who have caused mass destruction, death, and committed these horrible atrocities. And I don't know, I was just so captivated by what he was saying and how he was telling it that somehow it lulled me to sleep like a damn cat. It was quite a weird experience, but yeah, I could listen to Paul McGann for hours.
He's got one of those voices.
Well, I mean, I can recognize when a man has a sexy voice. And he's not got like one of those deep, sort of smooth caramel voices. He's got something that's, I'd say, probably more like high baritone, but he's just, his demeanor when speaking is just really calm and and relaxed, but also he manages to enunciate really nicely, and it just works. I could listen to him narrate anything. Like you said, with Neil Gaiman, he could narrate the phone book, and I'd be like, "Oh yes, Paul McGann, my dad." Please.
Stephen Fry for me is also like that. I listened to Stephen Fry's readings of the canon of Sherlock Holmes, and that was just, ooh, so good, so good, so good.
I'm trying to. You know who else can do that?
Whom?
Martin Jarvis.
Oh yeah, Martin Jarvis has a great narrator voice. He also, hey, if you want to listen to the audiobook version of Good Omens, he's the narrator of that.
Is he really?
So, yeah, it's Jarvis.
I love a bit of Jarvis because.
So yeah, you've got things you need to listen to.
There was. What did I listen to that was narrated by him? Because
probably a lot. He's done a lot.
He has done a lot of stuff, but I think I listened to Lord of the Flies. That was it, because for some reason, when my high school's fall play goes on, I can barely keep up with my English class. But yeah, I listened to his audiobook of Lord of the Flies, and oh my god, dude, it was he like captured just the foul atmosphere and like the horrible notes of the children's voices so perfectly. It's almost sort of the exact opposite of what Paul McGann can do with his narration, where Paul McGann is just like really calming and relaxing to listen to. Martin Jarvis is just so theatrical and good at what he does that it's like a totally different style of narration and I guess voice acting, and I just, they're two opposite ends of the spectrum, and I love Martin Jarvis almost as much as I love Paul McGann. They're really talented actors and narrators. Have you heard him read Lord of the Flies?
I've not even read Lord of the Flies.
Really?
Yeah, I never had to read it. So I just never have.
You never had to read Lord of the Flies.
I never had to read Lord of the Flies.
You know what book I was looking forward to but never got to read?
What?
1984.
Oh yeah, no, I have read 1984. Of course, it's a good novel.
Well, now I have to wait until at some later point when I have the time to sit down and read 1984 to read 1984.
It's not particularly a long.
It isn't a particularly long book,
but this is also you we're talking about.
This is also me we're talking about, who can only manage to read one book a month for some reason. There was a while there where I was getting pretty good at reading.
Yeah. Well, part of it is you just have to keep at it. Like, I'm okay. The last book I finished was The Taking of Planet 5, and that was like over to like 12, nearly 2 weeks ago. Because COVID-19 happened. Because yeah.
Well, a lot of it is, I see reading as something to do in the pastime when I don't have a lot of stuff going on. So, like, when I suppose school's done and I don't have a lot of hobby stuff going on, that's when I read. And
see, that's not necessarily the best time to read. You should be trying to read because you like to read, not because you don't have other things to do. Like, I like
Well,
to take, like,
here's why I do it in the times where I don't have anything else to do. I'm I'm not like I don't have like a reading disorder or anything. It just takes me a long ass time to read on my own, just in general, because I get easily distracted by stupid shit.
yes.
I don't have any disorder or anything. It's just a lot of stuff makes me go, ooh, you know, interesting thing out of the corner of my eye, like my fucking cat playing with, I don't know, something. And that distracts me from reading. I do like reading. I like the idea of reading. It's just, for some reason, I can't sit down and dedicate the time to it unless I am supremely really captivated by what I am reading. It's part of the reason I like audiobooks more than regular books.
Yeah. Again, if you get money to spend on Audible, get some Gaiman stuff on audiobook. You will not be disappointed.
I will.
Or if your local library has an ebook program, they'll also possibly have an audiobook program.
They do. I lost my library card though.
You can get that replaced for free.
I know I can, but
so do it.
The local branch of my library is still closed.
They're not doing any like.
You can't go in. No.
Well, no, because I was able to get mine curbside.
No, I wasn't able to do that.
Well, I know some libraries are making a lot of their have gotten deals where they can make a lot of their stuff.
This library is also relatively low tech.
Ooh, that's a thing. Wow.
Yeah, it's sort of an old thing, and the town I live in doesn't really sink a lot of money into that type of thing, and so it's still running on like computers from the 90s and shit like that. It's sad.
Mm-hmm.
The main branch, like located downtown, is, you know, up to date and everything, but like sort of like the branches in the suburbs are not.
Oh, you know what? You do have an I because I remember where you live. I think you do have you can get access to get digital media.
The three sort of digital media outlets I have through the library are, I can never remember.
And apparently you can sign
OneDrive or Overdrive.
It's Overdrive. It's Overdrive.
I have Overdrive.
And I just said it says you can sign up for an instant digital card. You can get your library card replaced online. You have no excuse right now.
I didn't know I could.
if I have the right library, which I hope I do.
It does get a little fucking weird where I live. Like, it's broken up into different.
Okay, you're gonna edit this video, right? At least
I am.
Okay, so you can just bleep out your.
I can just cut out this whole section where you're like telling me where I live.
It's the Akron Summit County Public Library, right?
Yes, that's the one.
Yes, you can get a digital card. You have you have a website. You have no excuse.
I didn't know I could.
You can. So yeah, you can get stuff. Now I don't know, obviously, what your Overdrive collection is going to be.
We have two other sort of outlets. One of them is kind of weird and fucky. It starts with an R. I don't like to touch it particularly often, but the other one, by the way, we're back on podcast now.
I assumed. Yeah. for those coming in late, we figured out that Brian can get a library card online.
Yes. Anyway, so yeah. It starts with an R. Can't remember what it's called. And the other one I think is called Hoopla.
Again, the Overdrive and Hoopla are the two big ones that a lot of libraries have.
We have a lot of Big Finish on Hoopla, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think.
So yes, you have no excuse. Just check out if you can get an audiobook of any of Neil Gaiman's work from the library. Do so. Do so.
I really should read more.
You have no excuse.
I know I have no excuse. It's just
what's hilarious is
I struggle with time management, and to read you have to be good with time management.
Here's the thing. I love how over the internet I can kind of bully you into doing more reading. But if this was in person, that's not happening because you are like taller than me by like a lot. And like,
are you intimidated by people who are taller than you?
I can't be intimidating towards people who are taller than me. I don't get intimidated.
See, I get intimidated by people who aren't as tall as me because I'm like freakish. I don't want to say freakishly tall. You're not like freakishly 6'4". Tall. I'm just large. I'm not like 7 feet tall. I'm not Andre the fucking Giant, even though that is my nickname. I'm like
look a bit
John
like
Pertwee or Tom Baker sized.
Yeah, I'm 5'11", so like I'm not short.
No, that's not short at all.
But like
you're just under 6 feet. That's not short for a dude.
Yeah,
I think you're probably about average. Meanwhile, I'm
a little bit above average. I think average is like 5'8" for dudes.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting here like 6'3".
You are 6'3". I would have to look up to look you in the eyes.
Only slightly, but yeah, no, I get intimidated by people who are shorter than me. I'm a big wuss in actuality.
That's interesting because I don't think I'm a very intimidating person. And so I'm socially awkward.
Part of it is I just genuinely don't like physical violence.
I mean that's fair, but
I mean
also
you have to think of the shit I was raised on. Like, I was raised in a relatively liberal family, and B, I was raised on Doctor Who, so not solving things with violence is sort of where, I don't know, that comes from. In most cases, I strive to be pacifist and solve things with my words and brain instead of fisticuffs. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And as a result, I'm relatively weak when it comes to, just sort of like play bashing and shit like that. Just sort of like a good old punch on the arm. I'll be like, ow. Because I don't do that. Like, not often. So please don't beat me up if you don't like me. It won't be a fair fight.
It won't be a fair fight. I can imagine just a child.
And I also won't fight. Well, I might fight back if I'm attacked, but I won't want to, simply just because of my own morals. I could never be a soldier, dude. I don't know how people do that shit.
It's a difficult thing. Very difficult thing. There's a reason basic training is so cutthroat, because it's psychologically meant to break you.
Yeah. I have a lot of respect for people who can just, go on and be a soldier. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, that shit, I have no idea how rough that shit is in actuality, but I do know it's rough. And although I wouldn't say I'm a patriotic person, and some people might see that as disrespecting veterans and soldiers and things. I have
funny because a lot of veterans are not feeling the most patriotic right now.
Yeah, but like some people, I'm gonna be flat out honest here. Like, I can't be arsed with stupid shit like the Pledge of Allegiance. Because I'm just not patriotic enough to give enough of a shit to stand up and do it.
Well,
It's
the
not.
Pledge of Allegiance is almost a pseudo-religious thing.
I'm not not standing out of protest, and I'm not really doing it out of disrespect either. I'm just.
It's literally, you think about it and you're like, wait, this is weird. This is a weird thing.
There's that, and I just. Loving where I come from isn't on the list of things I worry about.
I mean, it also asks, what do you mean by loving where you come from? Which bits of it do you love? Is it your family? Is it your hometown?
When I think patriotism, I think like, yes, our country is great. We love America. We love the government. The government is awesome. Shit like that. And
well, see, that's part of that is nationalism, patriotism, and people like to co-opt patriotism and try to make it nationalism, which you should not do, because nationalism is a word that more describes the undying, unthinking love of one's country, which is no. If you are a patriot, you should criticize the hell out of the country you come from, not if you're an American.
Here's how I view it, like, and I have the same view on religion too. It's just, I have one life. There are things that matter more to me than some societal ideology that I have to love where I come from, or I have to worship a possible creator. Like, life's too short for that, in my opinion. I have better stuff to be doing than spending or wasting my time on that. For some people, it's legitimately a form of, it makes them feel better about themselves, and I don't begrudge them that. It's just, it's not for me.
Yeah,
that's the long and short of it. It's not for me. It's not something I can be bothered worrying about. And some people might, bringing it back to me respecting soldiers, I do. I respect soldiers on like whole mounds of levels, because like
you can respect soldiers.
You fought for something you believed in, and that is where I respect you. And you did the people who are behind you a huge service. And in fact, because I do live in the country, you did me a huge service, and I thank you for that 1,000 times over. I love that you were brave enough to go out there and fight for what you believed was right and just. That's amazing to me, because I could never do that. Not to the extent that they do. But I'm not patriotic. Or at least not what, society deems patriotic nowadays. I don't have that undying patriotism. And same with religion. I don't have an undying religion to anything.
I'm curious, were you ever raised in religion?
No, my parents are both atheists.
That's interesting.
But here's the interesting thing. All right? Here's the really interesting bit of that. I went to preschool. And preschools are private. They're private organizations, and they're usually religious. So I went to preschool, and I learned.
Are they really? Wait. Are all preschools usually?
Yeah,
I'm in a school
usually.
district that has not where I'm at. We have a public preschool.
Well, we don't have a public. Maybe it's different now, but where I'm at, there's never been like public preschools.
Yeah, well, where I'm at, we
so basically the place I went to Monday through Friday in the afternoon was a church. Essentially, it's kind of like a daycare, and we'd have our little snacks and pray, and then on holidays we'd go sit in like this tiny cathedral thing, and it was all well and fun. But through that, I learned about basic religious stuff, God, stuff I haven't thought about in so long.
Blah blah Bible Jesus match.
Blah 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 Jesus, thank him. Yeah, stuff like that. And
And yes, I was quoting Beetlejuice the musical for anyone who got that reference.
but yeah, no. So it was definitely something that was present in my life, and when I asked my mother and father if they believed in God, they were like, no. And I asked them, should I believe in God? And they said, that is entirely up to you. And you shouldn't be worrying about stuff like that right now because you are 5 years old. And
you are going to have an existential crisis at age 5.
I didn't have an existential crisis. And then, I got out of preschool. And for a while, I guess I did believe in God, but it was like sort of in the same way that a little kid believes in Santa Claus. You know what I'm saying?
Like a deistic god, almost. In a lot of ways.
Yeah. And as time grew on, it just sort of faded, and
very, very much in the Terry Pratchett, why we need fantasy sense, essentially.
It's
because Terry Pratchett makes an argument in the novel Hawk. Terry Pratchett, who wasn't atheist and never believed in a god, essentially makes an argument for why people need to believe in, at least as a young child, need to believe in something like Santa. Basically, because it's so we can. You need to believe the little lies, so the big ones that come on later on in your life. I'm paraphrasing here. Will make sense.
Yeah.
Because
I agree with that sentiment.
It's the sentiment of show me 1 ounce of justice, show me 1 ounce of truth, and you won't be able to.
But when you think about it, like actually sit down and think about it, there isn't really anything that makes Santa Claus more credible than
Well,
God.
Actually, there are things that make it more credible. Saint Nicholas was a real person. We have the records. Whereas,
all right, and
in a lot of senses,
you want to hear something really stupid?
What?
People I know who are atheist think Jesus was not a real person. And I'm sitting here like, no, he.
Well, here's the thing: there actually is contention over the historical Jesus. The books of the Bible concerning Jesus were only ever written 70 years after his supposed death. Jesus as a name was a very common name in the time period. So, again, through historical telephone, and because Jesus would have been a commoner, there's obviously it's not like, say, Caesar Augustus, who we know was one specific person, because of the way the records are, because they're so scarce. There is contention over, was Jesus one person, was Jesus multiple people?
It could be possible that he was multiple people, but I do think that at some point, some organization or one person who taught Jesus's ways did exist, and I don't think there's any refuting that.
Yeah, but obviously the ideas attributed to Jesus of Nazareth at one point were spread. Somehow,
and they had to be done by someone. And I sit
here's
here
the thing.
And I'm just like, either way.
But all I get to is someone someone or multiple someones who said those things.
Yeah, in one way or another, Jesus existed, whether it was multiple people or one person. Someone taught those beliefs, and I'll say right up front that there's some stuff, like just regarding the religious aspect. There's some stuff that Jesus said that rings totally true, and people should just follow.
Well, because a lot of, again, we talked about originality. A lot of Jesus' ideas weren't necessarily original. There was Greek philosophy beforehand. A lot of other cultures, ancient cultures, came to similar ideas about helping others and altruism before that. Like, it's just the nature of everything.
But yeah, I just want to clarify that in case anybody, religious, specifically Christian, is watching, thinking,
Ooh, if we get some good angry Christian comments, I will be very happy.
I'm like, Christ didn't exist. No, Christ existed at some point. That I am fairly sure. I just don't believe in the God stuff.
The God stuff, or any of the miracles, because the gospel. Here's the thing: the Gospels were written 70 years after Jesus.
The Bible was the first anthology storybook. Okay.
I don't even think that's true. I don't think that's true, because the Homeric cycle came before the Bible, and Homer's just the dude that wrote it down. It was an oral tradition.
Shit. But yeah, it's just the Bible.
And I'm also pretty sure
the Bible is an old anthology storybook that, for some reason, we hold near and dear to our hearts, and that's
there's this thing called the Catholic Church.
I've just never
blamed them.
Well, because of how I think of it, religion, although I don't believe in any religion, it is an interesting concept for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like from trying to understand why some people are so hardcore into it and believe it so much, because where my mindset comes from is just like, if God can exist, why can't Santa Claus exist? And I know that probably offends a lot of people when I say that, but
I mean, that's just a variation of Bertrand Russell's cosmic teapot argument. Why don't you believe in the cosmic teapot that is orbiting in between Mars and Jupiter? That has not been able to be detected. You just have to have faith that the cosmic teapot exists and it is floating there in space. The argument sounds silly, because when you get down to it, it is.
And part of me wonders if it's just because a lot of people do think, like, I've talked to people, a lot of people see religion as sort of like almost this cosmic comfort, I suppose. A lot of people, like, who aren't stupid into it and will actually sit down and have like a reasonable conversation with me about it. They're just sort of like, a lot of people have said, I just don't want to be alone in the universe. It's easier to believe that there's something there that has a plan for me than I just am, and then suddenly I'm not, and it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And
the existential crisis is there. Again, honestly, for me, eternity sounds more terrifying than anything else. Like, an eternity of heaven or hell, either of them sound awful. I'm quite content that I only have 100 years of consciousness and existence, and that might be it.
I mean, there's definitely some stuff I wouldn't like to be around for, and here's what I take solace in. The suddenly you are and then you aren't. You ever been under anesthesia before? You probably have.
I have not.
You've never been put under? No, well, I have. No. And what it's like when you're put under is very different from, like, actual sleeping. It's sort of like your brain shuts off. So, like, it's almost like a blink of an eye. Like, you close your eyes, then you're very groggily awake again. And it's like no time passed at all. You're not, there was no dream or anything like that. It was just eyes closed, and suddenly you're like, why do I feel so weird? And I think death will be like that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it'll just be like,
I mean, I can't say I know what death is going to be like. I just know that's going to be.
I just assume that it's going to be that. It's like, all of a sudden, you'll just be unaware. So you can't care. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
One of the scariest things for me when I was younger was thinking about death and just being in blackness for eternity. But if it's anything like being put under anesthesia, it's nothing like that at all.
Yeah.
It's quite literally, there's nothing and you aren't aware that there's nothing. And honestly, I'm fine with that. If you couldn't tell, I've accepted my own mortality.
Mortality, yes.
But yeah, I do take comfort in thinking that, you know, I won't be aware of it when it comes. And I think religion might just be another form of that. That when...
I mean, there have been several books written on the origin of religion, and there are...
Oh my...
There are...
Speaking of books on the origin of religion, that is actually the title of a book my great-great-great-grandfather wrote. He wrote a book, probably early 1900s.
Possibly late 1800s.
Possibly late 1800s. Called The Origin of Religion. And it's ridiculous. It's so bad, dude. It's...
You've read it, and it's...
I've cracked it open. My mom read all the way through it. But it's just like this sort of very posh, very matter-of-fact thing that exists, and all of it is completely bullshit and wrong, and it's fucking hilarious.
Well, because it could have been written before the advent of the novel. Like, however many greats there are.
He refers to Neanderthals.
Is it pre-Pride and Prejudice?
He refers to Neanderthals as Mr. Neanderthal.
Mister?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact quote, but there's a bit that my mother read me when she first cracked it open, and it was... Mr. Neanderthal was walking along the fields one morning when he noticed an apple, and it was just shit like that. And that's the whole book. It's fucking hilarious.
But would the apple have been... I wonder if the apple would have been evolved at that point.
Yeah. Just fucking Mr. Neanderthal, man. It is to laugh. I wonder how it even got published.
Well, if they can publish that...
It never got past the first edition, dude. Like, there was never
It got one edition?
I think there may have been a first edition and a second edition, and that was it. It has never been reprinted. I'm sure someone... It's probably in the public domain now, actually.
Oh, it would have to... Who was the author, then?
I think it was an Elliot. My middle name is derived from my mother's family. Because my mother's family is the Dreys, but, you know, her mother's family is the Elliots. So, would had to have been my grandmother's grandfather, who wrote this.
So a long way back.
Yeah. It's just fucking hilarious, though. I can't... Every time someone talks about Origin of Religion, that book pops into my head. It's a hoot.
It sounds like a hoot.
It's an interesting read into what the mindset of a late 19th century... Wow, I can speak. Late 19th century, early 20th century man's mind was like. That is for damn sure.
Yeah, cause it seems like something weird. Like, who would write that?
My great grandfather. What he was a man, a myth, and a legend by all accounts, by the way. Like, my family has kept a very crystal clear family record, and we have like bits and pieces of diaries and shit just sort of preserved, and by all accounts he was a great hoot to be around.
A hoot.
And he would have been a very interesting man to meet, I feel like. I would, if he was still around, I'd like to hold a conversation with him.
A conversation with this absolute mad lad weirdo.
Yeah, it's anyway, we're pretty over time, so we probably gotta end it.
Hey, I didn't even go into like crazy stuff of here's what I'm reading.
Do you want to give me the quick fire round?
I mean, we don't have to,
stuff?
especially because this is probably going to come out after I finish reading the book that I'm reading.
Yeah, it's probably going to be like
2 weeks.
I've got Connor, then I've got Raiden. It's going to be like 6 weeks before this thing comes out.
6 weeks. I hope that I'm done with this book that I'm reading in 6 weeks.
Well, what for everyone who would like to know what it is as we're talking about this, what is this book you are reading?
It is called Dead House Gates. It is a fantasy novel. It is very long. It is 836 pages.
Who's it by?
Steven Erikson. It's part. I've been writing a series where it's the second book in the Malazan sort of universe thing series, which is a big series written by two authors, Steven Erikson and Ian Cameron Esselmont. And I've read the first book already. This is the second one. I skipped ahead to like the seventh book published, because the seventh book published is like a companion to the first book, and like is one of those things, one of the few books where you can read it out of publication order, and then I'm doing publication order for the rest of them. But yeah, it's good. I'm literally a chapter in. I'm only 40 pages in because COVID happened and I haven't read anymore. But yeah,
you should be done with it by the time this video.
I sure hope so, because I would like to not have just read 3 books this month. But yeah.
Jacob, you're slacking.
I know. I mean, the last month I've only read 3 books was June.
You need to pick up your game, bro.
I know. I'm hoping to have... Last year I read and reviewed 60 books.
Jesus
This year I have only read and reviewed 52.
You're getting close to your goal.
My goal is 75. My goal is 75. To have written and
I think I've
read and reviewed.
I've read more books this year than I have in a while, I think.
I mean, you have, because you did you've released videos for like recently for like 3 books.
I read them in like very concentrated ways. I've released videos for Dreamstone Moon,
And then the 3 Gary Russells.
And then
before Gary
I
Russells.
didn't just read Dreamstone Moon and Invasion of the Cat People,
and
whatever
Legacy.
the other one is, and Business Unusual. I also read God Engine and Blood Heat.
You did? Did you do videos for Blood Heat? A video for
No.
Blood Heat? Well, you should have.
I think I just talked about it on Twitter, but yeah, I read 7 books over the summer, which broke my record of 3 last year.
Yeah, I mean, if for the summer, I read from June to August. I read 10, 15, 16, 18 books, which is of various length.
I still didn't complete the goal I set out with at the beginning of the summer, though. So you were right on that. I almost got there, though. I got the majority of them done.
You almost got there.
I think I wanted to get to Placebo Effect. I'm on Seeing Eye.
I mean, it didn't help that like you had Dreamstone Moon. And
I only had the
Day.
tail end of Dreamstone Moon.
But yes, but you were there's that run of just bad books. Are you enjoying Seeing Eye, by the way?
I haven't been able to pick it up since last week because I fell behind on some school stuff, but I am enjoying Seeing Eye. Anyway, not a Doctor Who podcast. We need to stop talking about that.
Sorry.
Anyway, so
one of these days, I'm gonna come back and we're gonna nerd out about fantasy books.
Someday soon, but I did that way too recently with Mason. For that to be this one. So, yeah, that's Jacob. You can find him. I can't remember. Is your YouTube channel just your name, or is it?
Yep.
5996?
It is. My YouTube channel is my name. On Twitter, I'm at Newt5996.
So you can find him there. You can find him on YouTube as Jacob Licklider. And if you want to hear any of his novel adaptations for Doctor Who, if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can find those. You can find the first one on my YouTube channel, actually, and you can find them at Security Kitchen Productions.
Yes, because Joey is the mad lad who edits them.
I have to get him on here at some point.
I am just the idiot who does the scripts.
You do them fairly well, though. So anyway, until next time, this has been the Untitled podcast. Whoa, I fucked up my own name. Jesus Christ. Let's try that again.
You've gone British.
Until next time, this has been the As of Yet Untitled podcast with the title. I'm your host, Brian Corrigan, and I will see you all next time. Wow, that was a really terrible outro.